Hi, it's Frank from Canadian Tropicals, and today is the day that I panic. Not quite, but it's September 20th today, last day, full day of summer, and the forecast we have is we have a couple more days of sunshine, and then it's for the next 2 weeks, it's possibility of rain every day. This is the weather that kills proteas, so now is the time to move them into shelter. To begin with, a lot of protea, when they're small, are like little tiny fuzzballs. They're covered in hair. And that's because they grow in a more arid environment, and they use those hairs to catch moisture and direct them down the leaves to the plant. As the plant matures, as it gets a bigger taproot, it loses those hairs, and the leaves will generally become more leathery. Now, there are some exceptions to that, like the king protea. It doesn't have any hairs on its leaves even when young. It can tolerate our rain much better than the fuzzy ones. The fuzzy proteas, when they become bigger, don't completely lose their fuzz, and the rain in our cold, wet weather will cause their leaves to rot. Also, the rain will flush nutrients away from the soil. Rain has a normal pH of around 7. What happened, and proteas, a lot of proteas prefer a pH of around 5. So when the heavy rains come, it also flushes the acidity out of the surrounding soil and makes that soil more alkaline, and in turn the plant becomes more susceptible to fungal infections and phosphorus poisoning. So it's really critical for this time of year to move the proteas indoors or under shelter away from the high rain. I find with some proteas, like the Duchess protea, they are not forgiving at all when it comes to rain. And within a few days of consistent rain, they will start to rot. So you've got to plan ahead. When you see that we're moving into that cold, wet weather, move them out of the access of the rain. And for myself, I move my proteas into a unheated greenhouse. I only heat it when it drops below 0. So even in a pot, I let the proteas, or even in the greenhouse, I let the proteas get down to 0 degrees. I don't worry about them. King proteas, I'll leave outside until -4. I won't worry about them. But that critical thing is all that rain. So you can see what happens here is rain this morning, and the water, the leaves have this waxy coating on them. The water just pools and sits on every groove in the leaves, and the plant is already stressing out with the cooler weather we've had. In proteas, generally a reddish tinge is a sign of stress, and on the wind exposure side of the plant, so we've got this side of the plant which is away from the wind exposure, it's still nice and green, and if we switch over to the other side, we can see a lot more red happening. So this plant is already being stressed out, and we've only had mild rain so far. But you can see where the leaf is protected by another leaf. It's still nice and green, but that same leaf, the exposed portions have gone red from stress. So this is a plant, it's already saying, get me out of here, get me to where it's dry. Now this protea did bloom this summer, but another example of you've got to keep these things dry. On the south side of the bloom, it was 30-degree weather when it bloomed, and on the south side, the bloom looked great. On the north side, still 30-degree weather, it started to rot. And that's because even though the leaves have lost a lot of their hairs, the flowers are still covered in hairs, and it just trapped that moisture in there, and the north side would just never dry out. And what would happen is it was getting hit by a sprinkler. So twice a week, sprinkler would turn on for a bit, water the plant, turn off. And that overhead watering, just twice a week with the sprinkler, was enough to cause that bloom to rot. So that's something important to keep in mind, is that even if it's hot and dry weather outside, make sure you're not watering your Proteas from above. Water the pot, not the plant.